Hey, it's Debbie Potts, and I'm finally doing an episode on Ironman Hawaii World Championship Men's Race 2024 with Kurt Madden. He raced the event, the race. He raced the race, as well as coached athletes, some older athletes as well. And we'll talk about TriDot and fueling and pacing and race day and all things that we come up with. I have zero questions written down. Just want to talk shop about race day and how his race was and everything. So organic conversation. So hopefully you enjoy the talk with Kurt Madden, and we'll bring him on the show and let me know what topics you want to hear more of next time. Here. Okay, I have Kurt Madden, who's done how many Ironmans now?
I think this is my big 5-0.
You think? I think you know that. I'm sure you know that is your big 5-0. 5-0, you must know. It's not a thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
quite the milestone. I never imagined that that would even happen from my first one back in 1980. That wasn't in the plan. It just kind of worked out that way. So yeah, it's great to join you today, and hopefully we can add some value to all of your great listeners, Debbie.
Well, I just did a little intro before you came on that when I told you as well, I don't really have any specific questions. I just wanted to do a fun, organic conversation, recap of Ironman Hawaii men's race, about your race, team, tried out team members, and your observations and feedback you've got from people that were racing and just watching. I just think it's such an amazing day. I must add that I was there and I had a media pass. I got to be on the swim course with the photographers that have been covering the race for 30 years. And behind the scenes is always fun. But I wanted to talk to you because you've done 50 Ironmans and you are you are the head of TriDot coaching. And I
Mhm.
just wanted to kind of get your feel of how your race was to start with.
Yeah, well, maybe I think for the listeners, maybe get a little context here. I think that's important. So I'll break it up into small chunks, and then
Yep.
you can kind of trim it, just like maybe like as we're going into Thanksgiving, and then we'll go into the main course. So yeah,
Didn't
I
work
think
out today.
yeah, and again, I think first of all, as we probably know in the world of our sport of triathlons, that Kona is very special. And outside of the sport, I think that the Kona people can identify with that because every year it's covered pretty well as we look at any type of broadcast. So for me, this is my 11th time in Kona, and
Hmm.
you never know. I'm always humbled and then again honored and excited and thrilled that. I know that it can be a very humbling, but I think it's given me a certain peace, if that even makes sense, that I know the course, I know the community, I know what can and will happen. And then again, you're always a little bit unsettled on you just never know what might come up next. So I kind of just building up for the race, everything was clicking right along. And I thought I was prepped and primed and pumped and ready to go. And I was just really more than just me. I had a group of 6 people. So I called them the Sensational Six. And it was kind of cool. If I go from the elders, I had two 80-year-olds and they
That were
had
racing, right?
yeah, they were
Yeah.
racing and they had done that before. And then I had Team Agar, who was a dad and a son. The son had cerebral palsy, and I
Hmm.
started working with them about 3 months before. Didn't quite have enough time to work with them for, say, a year. So they were racing in the physically challenged. Then I had someone that had done 12 Ironmans. So they were in that legacy program. And just it was incredible. It took them 7 years to get to that point. I had another person that qualified in Ironman California 2 years ago and great runner, and he was ready to go. And then I had a 70-year-old that had been on the podium in 2019. So that was kind of my group. And I tried to work with them as a group, work with them as a team, and then individually because as a coach, you get to know them. So um, that was kind of where we were as we went into Kona. So do you want me to stop here and then ask a question, or do you want me just to keep on going?
Well, I'll just added, how is it when you have a race and you want to do well, I'm sure you want to finish strong. When you're coaching other people, you're worrying about that. How do you separate that? I'm my space, my race, my day, but then you're worrying about other people and still have some for yourself.
Yeah, I think what I've learned in coaching and the beauty of getting older is you actually experience something called wisdom. And when you gain that wisdom, you gain insights. And I think it's really, I use the phrase, I'm going to schedule the finish, knowing that I
Mm.
don't want to go into 30 minutes before the swim. Oh, and there's one more thing that you should think about. It was like, no, we had already done that heavy lifting. So we started actually months ago with our race prep of just getting the context with the training, the course, the terrain. I had done all
Mhm.
that. So by the time we got to Kona, there was not many questions at all. And the beauty of the group that I had is there was just really two kind of newbies that hadn't done the course, but I had done a lot of prep with them. So I felt as though I didn't have to do a lot of kind of that maintenance that you're going into the week. But I did check in with each person individually every day. We also had some team meetings that we got together on. But then they knew that when it came down to the last 3 to 4 days that they knew when I was available. They knew when I wasn't available. So you have to have that separation because
Mhm.
I know as a coach, I can't hover around athletes and it can be very draining. You don't realize how much it takes out of you because you have this
Mhm.
emotional connection. You put so much into this project with each person, but knowing that I had to back off. So that separation went really well and I didn't have any major issues before I got into race day.
Mhm. Yeah. So let's start with kind of, we're talking about Thanksgiving coming up here. So think of it as courses. So let's talk about the week of the race. I always find it interesting observing everybody on the Ali'i, on the Queen K, how every year I've been there for on and off for 24 years now. So interesting to me how people train hard up to the day of the race. How did you feel about yourself and your athletes and your observations about the week of Ironman Hawaii, which is on a Saturday, exactly a month from today or back a month ago?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think I see the same thing is that people get there and they start to get kind of mesmerized by these beautiful bodies and people and doubting themselves, and I don't have the confidence, and I've got to get out there and do a little bit more to kind of pay my dues. So with my athletes, and I think when I do this when I travel, I try to get there the the Tuesday before the race, meaning I guess it's almost 2 weeks out from the race. So
Mhm.
get in there on Tuesday. I get out on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Those 4 days, that's where we're going to do a little bit more volume, and we just follow our tried out training program. So I was able to know when everyone was arriving. I was with one of my athletes. We went all the way out to the Manalani, and I told him because it was his first time there, I've talked you through the course, and now we're going to actually do it. So we got on our bikes, and I said it's a 3 hour ride. Let's not push too hard, knowing that people have got to ride to Hobby at least once and then come down that
Mhm.
downhill. So we just took it easy. We got up there, we got some water at the store, and then we started coming back down, and the winds definitely picked up, the crosswinds. And I had been there before, many, many times with Ironman, with Ultraman. I've done a lot of training there with Hanu. And the athlete that I brought, I think I had to stop 3 times. And I asked him if he was okay. And he said, on the downhill, I set a new max heart rate record on my watch. I'm scared, really scared. I think I filled my
Yeah.
tri-suit a couple times. This is like really incredible. And I hope it's not like this on race day. So you could kind of try to
Mhm.
get those demons out of there. And we just took it easy and we got done. We did 20-minute run off the bike and then we drove all the way back. So in theory, the smart thing was he had already seen the whole bike course with that one trip because we drove
Mhm.
out to the
Yeah.
Monolani. We did the tough part and then I walked him through, okay, you've got 5 hills coming back. They're easy rollers, 400 feet, no big deal. So that was good. And then we're swimming every day and then we ran out at the energy lab and we did all that stuff. But really on Sunday, as we went now into race week, all the heavy lifting had been done to really set the tone to say our focus now is to taper to heat acclimates, to absorb all this energy that's going to come into this small little community. And every single day, please do not overcommit to every little thing that's out there because, as you know, they have the practice swim, then they have the parade, and they have the underwear run, and then they've got the coffee boat, and they've got the kids thing, and they've got something every day. So spend time if you need to with family, but keep in mind why you're here
Mhm.
and try to really eat smart, get to bed every night at 8 o'clock. So I thought on race week, even though as you know, every year it seems like Kona gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but I've been there so much, I know just keep things real simple, take that extra time. So going into race week, I didn't think there was anything that was that caught us off guard as a team. The check-in went really, really great. They're very organized. When you've been to something so many times, you know how it kind of lines up and you know what to do and what not to do. So I think we checked all the boxes. We didn't have anything major with bikes or physical things we had to deal with. So I think going into race morning things looked really good.
I think one thing to talk about that race week, becoming early enough to train, especially if you're first time up to heavy and coming down, because or going up and coming down, because it can be hard going up too. But those wins, you never know. You never know what's going to happen when you're on there and race day, what's going to happen. And it changes. It often seemed when I was racing that the pros would have no win at all. Then by the time the age groupers got through, we got hit with the side wins. But anything you can share with people who are not familiar with going out to Aviv, how those wins can be the long road, how many miles, and how it's often the side wind, but it's uphill sometimes is not as hard as the downhill
Hmm.
and why.
Yeah, I think the thing for our listeners, if you can just imagine a big volcanic rock, and we're going to call it the Big Island of Hawaii, think of kind of a square or rectangle. And then think of being 3,000 miles off the mainland, that wind blows all the time. You also have the factor that kind of on your left-hand side, a little bit, I guess it would be west, would be Maui. You've got a 10,000 foot peak, and anytime that wind blows over there, it's going to come down that, and then it'll come across that water very quickly, and then it hits the land, so that can really pick up the wind. So if you were riding a bike toward the turnaround point or out to Hawi, you're going to get it on your left-hand side. Conversely, on your right-hand side, you've got Mauna Kea, which is the highest mountain, and then you've got kind of a saddle that we talk about that's Waimea. Then you have the Kohala Mountain, and the wind likes to blow through the saddle. So in theory, depending upon Mother Nature, the barometric pressure, everything that's going on with storm systems, you can get wind going out from your left, coming from Maui, and on the right-hand side, coming over the saddle. So really, we talk about it that typically your first 15 to 20 miles on the bike, you've got a nice, gentle tailwind, which is very comforting, kind of using that as a warm up. And then when you get out to the lava fields, we know that it can change over every single rise that you're going over or a little downhill that you didn't even anticipate it. And we call it the wild winds of Waikoloa. I typically will work with athletes and myself. I look at the ocean. If I see white
Mm-hmm.
caps, I know
Yeah.
for sure I'm going to get some wind at some point. Then I look
Mm-hmm.
for the trees. If I see the palm trees or other trees and I see them blowing, I know for sure I'm going to get hit. And it's trying to really embrace that. So for our listeners, keep in mind that when you go out and back, it is not a technical course. Elevation gain is about 4,400 feet, give or take. So you've got 2,200 feet going out and you've got 2,200 feet coming back. It's a moderately hilly course. I wouldn't put it, say, on the scale of Lake Placid or Coeur d'Alene. It's nothing like that. At the same time, I think what makes it very demanding is that when you look at the context, it's a very unexposed area. You are in lava fields. And when you're in lava fields, you're very exposed. You have no shade. You're just literally out there. So you've got wind, humidity, heat, and the backdrop of lava, which is going to elevate that temperature. So as you're going out on the bike ride, you've got to watch your pace, you've got to watch your heart rate, you've got to look at your hydration, you've got to look at your nutrition. And there's been times when I've been out there that really on a flats, I'm in a small chain ring or a small sprocket on my bike and I'm going 10 miles an hour. There's other times where I'm in my big sprocket or big chain ring on a flat and I'm going 36 miles an hour and I'm flying. So it's kind of that love-hate. And like you said, Debbie, as you're climbing to Hovey, you never know what type of wind you're going to get until you get there. You have to just
Mm-hmm.
like no matter what, you can look at a wind app, you can look at everything, and that's the beauty of what we have now, as you can study all that. But I've learned that sometimes that's not accurate. So climbing to Hawi, you want to remember that it's not anything that's technical or you don't have a 10% grade. The steepest section is about 5% the last 5 or 6 miles, but you're going from a desert environment into a rainforest environment. So it typically gets very wet. The temperature gets a lot cooler. And again, the wind can come from your right, the wind can come from your left. And I've had times where you cannot even let go of your handlebars because you're going into
Right.
headwinds. Other times it's very forgiving, but on the downhill, it's very common, depending upon your level of comfort on a bike, that you can hit 45 miles an hour. And then with your side rogue winds and then the rumble strips on there, you want to be really careful that anything
Mm.
can and will happen. And then you're coming back down to the desert. So the temperature changed from Hawaii in an 8 mile section. You're going from a rainforest to a desert. The temperature can change 10 to 15 degrees.
And then you get back on that the Queen K. It's just I remember that one little before you turn onto the highway, it's like 100 degrees feeling there. It just totally changes the temperature once you get up there.
Yeah, and that little section that you're talking about right there, that's the harbor down there. And again, we
Yeah.
refer to that as the pit. That it is the pit for a reason because it gets hot, and it's kind of like the energy lab on the run is that the wind doesn't blow and you're checking your tires like, wait a minute, did I flat? I mean, I've got no motor, and you're watching your heart rate. But actually the race, and that's one thing when I worked with my athletes, is that when you actually get to that right-hand turn, you get to about mile 78 right there and you get back on the Queen K. That's when the race actually starts, no matter
Mhm.
where you want to be. And
Mhm.
like you said, when we were going out on race day, the pros were already coming back. I mean, there was very little wind. They were just flying. So
Yeah, you never know. I know I've had one experience years ago with some teammates when I was on Mark Allen's team and we were coming down from Hawaii and I've never, same thing. You're like, okay, I can't, if I get off my bike, I cannot get back on it. It's flying away, holding on to it. We were stuck for a bit and finally did some deep breathing and try to get all that confidence you can and not be scared and freaking out that like, okay, there's no other options to get on my bike and try to do my best. Unless I'm gonna try to walk, but I don't think that's a possibility either.
yeah.
Yeah, we all have these memories, I think, of that if you've trained there enough. So compare that course to Nice as the men's race. You guys were on Nice, France course last year.
hmm
What do you say the comparison of bike course to bike course? Totally different, similar challenge. It's challenging, but it's different
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah. The similarity, they're challenging, but it is like night and day. So probably again
Mm-hmm.
for our listeners, the way to explain it would be when you look at Kona, it's more of a ride where you need some long, sustained efforts in your training because the hills, the rollers in Kona, they're long and sustained. So as you're prepping for that, your training is suggested that you're doing longer, kind of what we're going to call not a zone two at aerobic, but more of a tempo, kind of like a zone three. You're going to push those for 20, 30 minutes. It's not technical. It's nice and easy. It rolls up and then it comes right back. The biggest thing in Kona, as we know, is that you've got the heat, the lava, the wind, and the wind can just be brutal and can just demoralize you. And then also, just knowing your hydration and your nutrition in Kona, I think, is key. It's far different than Nice because you definitely need calories. I don't think you need to be excessive on your calories, but those electrolytes are going to be so important in leveraging those aid stations when you're in Kona, and then knowing those benchmarks and always looking ahead, like I know exactly what I'm going to need as I get there. And then when you get to mile 100, like, oh my goodness, I am off this bike in 25 minutes, and guess what? I get to run a marathon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it's a little bit warm out there. So there's a lot of mental things that go into the Kona bike course. Conversely, when you're in Nice, it's a whole different vibe. I think if I kind of looked at it from an American standpoint, possibly instead of like from French or from Europe, is like, first of all, you're in a foreign country. Secondly, is that you haven't biked on this course as much as you have, say, in Kona, because Kona is very easy to access.
Mm-hmm.
And Nice, it's a little bit more technical. Now, if I did a training camp there and I spoke French, it would be a lot easier because I could just navigate my way. But when you're in a foreign country and you're not sure of where you're going to go or where the course is, you got to be a little bit more cautious. But Nice is a very technical course. Number one, it is technical on the descents, and if you're not strong in Nice on the descents, you're going to have a lot of challenges. Secondly, is that when your preparation for Nice, it's a lot more power. You've got to have power because you've got some very, very steep climbs that are short, some are punchy, some are very long. And then again, you've got the extra time on the bike because if you're climbing 8,000 feet as compared to 4,400 feet, you know that you're just going to be in the saddle probably at least an hour longer if I compare the two
Mhm.
bike courses. And that
Mhm.
extra time, that extra stamina mentally, physically, it just takes its toll. The other thing too with Nice is that when you're ascending on a bike, it's very hard to ascend on a tri bike and drink.
Mm. Yeah.
It's you can multitask, but that's not your love language that you're going to
Mm.
go to. So in your training, you've got to learn that I've got to keep my bottle. It's got to be your best friend because if you kind of use the mindset, well, I'll drink when I get to the top of the hill, that might be 40 minutes, 60 minutes, and that one variable right there can crush your whole race. So it's learning how to climb and sip and get nutrition. Conversely, when you're traveling 40 miles an hour in a descent, you
Mhm.
cannot multitask. There's just
Yeah.
it's unsafe. And there were crashes there. So you've got to be careful of that. And then I think also just trying to be ready for the unknown. That in Nice there's so many blind turns you're going around and you've got groups and it's a little bit more sketchy. So you've got to be on your game and then knowing too that you've climbed 8,000 feet, that your legs feel much different after you're on the bike an extra hour with an additional almost 4,000 feet to say, okay, now I'm going to run the marathon. So yeah, two different scenarios, but I think both
Mhm.
very demanding. And it's always a good feeling in Nice, and it's a good feeling in Kona to say, I'm off the bike now. All I have to do is run, shuffle, or walk.
Yeah, just get off the bike. Also, I know Nice, France, that course because I'm a good hill climber, but I'm not so great going down those hills. I would definitely need some training and some confidence building to do that course. It seems a little intimidating for the descent part.
Hmm.
So back to Ironman Hawaii in Kona, race week is very busy, as you said.
Hmm.
Race day, the swim start. What did you find this year's swim? I was on the boat at the start line. I know some of the pro men. I saw one guy was telling us that 10 of them got stung by jellyfish. There's a swim cap, goggles off of one guy I was watching in the pro race. How did you feel about the swim this year?
Well, I think the swim this year is, first of all, Ironman was very organized. And that
Mm,
makes it nice. And I knew the flow of how it was going to work. And I think the ocean was very flat that morning. So I knew that was going to be a better swim. And I think where I positioned myself, I was in the fifth wave. So I wasn't
mhm,
like an hour and a half behind. I was a little bit behind, but it's for me, it was like, okay, it's going to happen. This is well, I've trained for actually 2 years now because we weren't in Kona last year. So a
mhm.
lot of the people in this race, for our listeners, they had qualified 2 years ago. And then when Ironman decided to move the men to Nice, you had the option to go to Nice
Oh, I didn't know
or
that.
go to Kona. So
Oh,
I chose to defer my slot to 2024, but I still earned a slot to go to Nice. So you had
mm.
2 years of age groupers there, which made it
Oh,
very
I didn't even
competitive.
get that part. That's amazing.
Yeah, see, that's
Hmm.
a little key thing that we always need to keep in mind. So anyway, I just kind of swam out real easy and I know the course and I was pumped and primed and did a few sink downs and like, okay, bring it. And 30 seconds before, it's like this is getting real and boom, the gun goes off or the cannon
Mhm.
took off. For the first 5 minutes, it was like I was totally good. And then literally I got T-pwned with a jellyfish
Mm. We did.
right on my forehead and my whole head went
Never
numb.
seen
And then
them.
it was boom on my forearm and then on my other forearm and then my forearms went numb and I'm like, whoa, what just happened? And I was like, and you don't know because it's just you. There's 2,500 athletes. You're not sure if it was just you or what was going on, but I'm like, okay, don't panic. They've got kayaks here. I'm in Kona. I've got my skin on. They're going to come and get me if something bad happens. But, I just felt like, okay, that was not a good experience. Then when I got out of the water, it was about 3 minutes, I think, behind my anticipated time, which on that course, depending upon the currents, it's like, okay, no big deal. But then they were spraying down everyone with vinegar, and I'm thinking, what's going on? It's like, I think somebody knew that there was some jellyfish out there that I didn't know about. Not that I could even you can't, I mean, it's really just when you think about it, you can't really go around a jellyfish. It's kind of like the Diana Naya thing. They're like, guess what? This is going to get rough and just hang on. So,
Mhm.
anyway, it's different. I
Yeah.
think when you think about people say, well, you get stung by a jellyfish, it's not that bad. I think if you're at the beach, if you're at Solana Beach and you get stung by a jellyfish, there's a lifeguard. They're going to say,
Mhm.
Debbie, sit in your chair. we're going to take care of you. We've got some vinegar or sand or whatever the case might be, and that's it. In a world championship, it's like I don't really have time for vinegar right
No.
now. I mean, I got to get out of T1 because I'm here to do my very best. So yeah, I could just feel it every time water went on my forehead or water went on my arms. It felt like a hot iron. And I'm like, okay, I just have to deal with it. So I got out of the swim and I felt, pretty good. But again, I just know what I knew, and I wasn't asking people, hey, did you get stung by a jellyfish? So
Yeah. No time.
I took off on the bike, and on the bike, I think everything went well. It was, everything was dialed in. It was like there wasn't too windy. It was, the weather was decent. It wasn't too hot. The nutrition went fine. Like I said, the pros were flying back. When I got to the Monolani, they were already coming back, and I'm thinking they're going to get back at the pier like 11 o'clock. And it's the full Ironman. They're coming back to the
Yeah.
pier at
That's
11 o'clock.
insane.
And a lot of the age groupers were just like they barely got to Waikoloa at that point. So
Mm.
anyway, went up to Javi. It wasn't too bad. Did the turnaround, came on the downhill. It wasn't too bad. I'm checking all the boxes. I'm watching the wind. I'm looking at the ocean, doing everything. Came off the bike in 5:57, about 7 or 8 minutes faster. I'm like, hey, my heart rate's good. I'm ready to go. Nothing too bad. I'm like, I can check that box. I felt really good about that. And then the run, you don't know what you have until you start the run, and that's always a
Mm.
mistake with a full Ironman. You're gauging it off of your taper, your race rehearsals, and I knew that on this course it was going to get warm. I knew I was going to hit some low spots, and on this day in particular, I just didn't maybe feel the implications of those jellyfish, but I could tell during the first 3 miles on the run, I actually carried a bottle with me, and I was consuming 12 ounces of fluid. At
Mm.
the aid stations, I was doing the ice, I was doing the Coke. I didn't do a lot of the mortal. I did a little bit of the water, but I'm thinking, okay, I don't even have the urge to urinate yet. And
Mm.
I think I felt my best about mile 6 and went up Polani. And I know that's a tough section to walk up and like, okay, I'll get my second wind. Then didn't quite have my second wind. And I think I actually, um, as I went out, I was just doing my best just to maintain, but I just couldn't seem to get a rhythm. I couldn't get a tempo going, and for me, that was just super frustrating. I just couldn't seem to bounce back. And then I think at mile 16, I finally stopped into my first porta potty. Like, okay, wait a minute. You've been running for 2 hours and 30, 2 hours and 40 minutes. You've consumed 12 ounces every 10 or 12 minutes, and this is the first time. I mean, really, when you just do the math, this is the first time. I mean, everyone's bladder is only so big. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking this is the first time. I mean, you're really exposed to a lot of heat. And then one of my athletes, John Renkin, who is a prostate cancer survivor, he connected with me at mile 16, and he was having a challenging day, and he had had a hip injury, and he said, Coach, we're going to run together the last 10 miles. And I'm like, John, you are like a Tesla. You're a Ferrari. You need to go. And he goes, oh no, I've waited this long to be with you, and we're going to go the last 10 miles together,
Oh,
no matter
that's
what.
special.
And that
Yeah.
was pretty cool. I mean, in the moment you're in a world championship, I don't think he was physically able to run much harder. So it was a combination of like running, walking, shuffling, and then the sun setting, you're out the energy lab and you check that
Mm.
box and you come out of there and then you're starting to come back and, just feel that energy. And I know I saw McKeely Jones at mile 24 and I love McKeely so much. And she's like, with her accent, she can do it well. I can't, but she's like,
Yeah.
come on, Coach Kurt, giddy up, giddy up. And I'm like, McKeely, there's not a lot of giddy up in this horse today, sister. So, but anyway, so
The
we,
best.
yeah, we went down Palani and made the left right there on Kuakini and then they made right-hand turns. And I think for John Renken, it just all of a sudden it just started the energy and the excitement he didn't realize.
Mm.
And you've been there, Debbie, you know how it is. The last
Yeah.
90
It's my
seconds, he goes
favorite
like,
part.
oh my gosh, I cannot
Mm.
believe what's happening. So we were able, it was pretty cool that we came across that finish line together. And I was just
I
so
saw it.
grateful. I was
Hmm.
grateful to finish. I was grateful to say, hey, I've raced 11 times in Kona, my 50th Ironman to be with my athletes, and also be very humbled that you never know what's going to happen out there, and really a new sensitivity and empathy for people that have allergic reactions, for that. So I thought, kind of
It's
back
true.
to your question at the top of the show, I thought for me, my nutrition was good that day. The
Hmm.
short version is that I carbo loaded not excessively, but I was very strategic on my carbos. I think I
Hmm.
try to utilize more of fat burning for that. So I had a good mixture of carbo fuel, and then I had some Vespa nutrition. I put a little ketone in
Mm-hmm.
there, some carnitine,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
maximize that fat burn. I did shift over to the simple sugars though on the run because I've learned
Yeah.
in Kona that Coke and
You
ice
work
and water is probably your
magic.
best friend. Yeah.
Yes.
But I can tell you that I think I need to go on a 12-step program that I drank so much Coke. I will never, I will, it'll be 6 months before I even have the desire to have a Coke again.
Yeah.
And I am a sinner because I'm a Cokeaholic, at least for Kona.
Oh. Well, that's a question I want to talk about is the fueling. So that was kind of my focus is to watch how people are pacing and working up towards race day, but also race day, what people were choosing to fuel as we've talked about Vespa and S fuels and all these different fuels out and the different carbs grams per hour, S fuels and Dan Plus or the 60 grams, and all these other companies are saying 100 to 120 grams an hour. So I was interested that how people were doing dialing in their own nutrition because we're all different. And what works for one doesn't work for the other, as we all learned to figure out your gut health and the heat, the humidity. And it wasn't that hot, I thought, compared to other years. It got cooler in
Hmm.
the afternoon. But you found your different fueling strategies for the bike and then the run. Do you find that you're able to get that nutrition in time so you can feel good? Is your goal ideally to feel good on the run from how you feel on the bike? Prepare for the run?
Yeah, I felt for me. And again, I think first of all, I would say that there's different, I want to be really politically correct when I say this. With nutrition, there are a lot of different philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a person needs to find the one that works for them. And also keep in mind, it's like a bifocal view. I'm going to pay a price on race day, but think of long-term metabolic health.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a message I want to send to all of our listeners because I think if we look at the benchmark of what the pros are doing, if you kind of hear the buzz out there that quote, you have to train your gut, I'm probably not going to be a super strong advocate for that because I know for sure that if you just break down the simple conversation of let's talk about 90 grams or 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour. I get that, but let's kind of open the curtain up a little bit more. What is that source of carbohydrates? And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if it's any form of sugar, if you look at a maltodextrin, a sucrose, a fructose, how much can your body actually absorb and maintain? Knowing that when you're out in a very extreme event like Kona in the lava fields and the heat and the wind and lava, your GI tract is really distressed right there, no matter what you're doing to it. And then you're throwing in all the sugar, and it can be a very limiting factor. But I think, again, I've learned through experience, if you do a lot building up to a race like this and really go through kind of a strategic carbohydrate protocol, you still need glycogen. I totally get that. But when you look at long term, if you're always fueling heavily on sugar and or carbohydrate, you're probably going to have a very poor time recovering. And then you look at your health of your GI tract, and I think it's going to do some damage that a person might not know for years after. But if you're racing for 3 years or 5 years or 7 years or 10 years during that window of time, the amount of sugar you're putting into your system, there's probably a better alternative to do that. I think also too that I think our sport is to the point now that where the more liquid calories are definitely the way to go versus back in the days, Debbie, that it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and buttercups and you name it, and we
Big
were throwing
Newtons.
yeah, fig Newtons throwing that stuff down, and I think those days are gone. So I think again it's something that is when in doubt, it's better to have a little bit less rather than too much because once you've overconsumed, then you're going to be in trouble. And once you experience that GI distress in any way, shape, or form, chances are the rest of your race is not going to be very enjoyable for you and for those
Mm-hmm.
around you because it's unpredictable. You're not sure what's going to happen next with every step. So it's one of those things that we want to continue to monitor, but it's sad to see some of the pros, what they're trying to do to
I just
themselves
don't get it.
to say that they have to do that. They believe that's going to make a difference when personally, I think when I look at the nutrition and the physiology, that it's the amount of calories you take in should not be the limiting factor in you winning or PRing. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
more of your training. I think it's more of your mindset that you've got to get back to those so you can fuel, do a little bit less. At the same time, you've got to have those electrolytes definitely ramped up for Kona.
Well, I know a lot of thoughts. One is kind of red flag when you're known for throwing up on your bike leg of the race all the time. It's like, okay, does anyone tell them that there's a reason for that? We need to redo your training and fueling program and work on your timing of carbohydrates and how much you're taking in that you're not supposed to. It's not your new normal, and you shouldn't be known for that. Red flag. But
Well, and you know this, Debbie, and shout out to you. You know, with your metabolic testing, I would think if you had a group of 10 athletes that were moderately to high trained and you did metabolic testing, that if they're in a zone two, and I would think in a full Ironman when you're on the bike,
mhm,
that you're kind of in a high zone two, depending upon the course. You know, if it's
mhm,
niche, you're gonna get zone three, maybe a little bit of zone four. But I
mhm,
would say if people are metabolically in a good spot, probably 60 to 70% of that burn is fat. So we have to ask
mhm.
ourselves, why are we adding so many calories when they're not, I'm not even there yet.
Yeah,
So that's one
yeah.
thing. I think there's a lot of still training that needs to be done in this area.
Mhm,
I think there's just a big gap for coaches, for athletes, and building up to that for months and months and months. Because again, when you look at just your metabolic health, even, you look at your dental health or your oral
mm,
hygiene, that it's
yeah.
amazing. I've had some athletes tell me, God, I don't know what's going on, but it seems like during the season when I go in, they're letting me know, God, I got another cavity here and another cavity there. Because if you're
Sugar
taking it,
gels.
I mean, if you just do the math, if you're taking, and I'm not being sarcastic, just a
Mm,
reality. I know some
yeah.
people, they said, hey, I've got it all dialed in. I'll take 3 gels an hour. I'm on the bike for 6 hours. That's 18. I'll do 2 gels an hour on the run. That's 4 hours. There's another 8 or 10. I'll do one before the swim. Before you know it, you're going to have up to
Mm,
30 gels. It's kind of like maybe we should pretend like it's Halloween again, and we're going to have gels, and we're going to see how many gels we can consume over a
mm.
period of 10 to 12 hours. I would think most people after 3 or 4, they're just going to go, I think I'm done. I'm out. I'm out on this one.
Yeah. It amazes me because we've had this podcast since 2012,
Hmm.
and the whole focus was to become more metabolically efficient. I met Bob Seaborn in 2009. We just did another podcast. I go, why are we still talking about this? It's 2024. We're talking about this in 2009. And I feel like I have to shift back to what on this podcast, what we've talked about 12 years ago. I have to go back into those same topics. They're still not getting across. And what we talked about Bob Seymour about the metabolic efficiency point, shifting it to the right, and how 75% of it's nutrition. And then we've talked to Peter Defty. I met him in 2013. So we've done many episodes on that. And that's been why I shifted this focus on are you fit and healthy from the inside out as you age for endurance athletes? Like, what are you doing now to improve your future self? And I think it's, focusing on performance, but are you doing it the right way? And what can you tweak and adjust to be healthy from the inside out, not cause trauma to your body that's going to impact you later in life?
Well, yeah, and I think too, on that note, I think too that, just my experience and my position on this would be that as you're ramping up for a race like this, you've got to really monitor your caloric intake. You've got to look at probably the deficit we have is probably protein. I think
Yeah,
it's real,
for
real
sure.
hard in our sport if you're doing, say, 20 hours a week of training that depending upon the athlete, I think it's for most people, including me. I cannot consume a large amount of protein before a session. So it's
No,
not a good combination.
you
So if I'm
can't.
trying to
No.
do a split workout, I know I can definitely get some protein after that morning session, but I have to time it that I haven't taken too much and I'm okay in the afternoon.
Yep.
And then again, if you're just kind of protein fasting and just saying like I'm gonna have to catch up at dinner, it's hard to get in 150 grams in one meal of protein. So it's really being able to
Hmm.
space that out. So it's eating smarter and also I think just trying to eat as clean as possible that I know I work with a lot of people. They just really are on. So, coach, what supplements do I need to take to get better? I'm like, stop. Listen to I'm going to repeat what you said. That's a supplement. Can we look at
Hmm.
your foundation? Can we look at your framework of let's eat clean and really get educated on the right way to eat and how to cook and prepare your meals? And to me, that's like the ultimate. It's kind of like that book that came out last year. I think it's called Good Energy. If
Yeah.
everyone just
Hmm.
went organic for a month and stopped a lot of processed foods, things would be
Yeah.
a lot better. But your body starts to, when you do that, your body starts to just crave all those carbohydrates all the time, and it's hard to kind of get off of those things. So I don't know if
Hmm.
we're ever going to finish on that, Debbie, but I think there's just so much work. And then also just regular metabolic testing and regular just blood panel, because
Yeah.
when you look at it's like a picture. We're saying the exact same thing on this one. It's not altered. No, it's like
Hmm.
see those things and what can we do to elevate those? And I think
Hmm.
I would be really excited in just doing some longitudinal study on the metabolic health of triathletes. And I
Mm.
think that would be something that we need to have some action research done and do it in
Mm.
such a way that we can show people that there's a few different ways to do this. You can create the study way you want to of just
Yeah.
doing a kind of a high carbohydrate lift versus moderate versus no, we're not going to do as much. I think we're going to have enough to say that probably on the lower end, we're going to do a lot better short term and long term.
Hmm. Yeah, great point. Which I was just thinking, just talk to Graham Fraser. They're out filming this big documentary on Ironman. They should add in how healthy are people from inside. Let's look at their labs and
Hmm.
see where they are. It'd be
Yeah.
interesting. I'll have to
Well,
reach out.
and you think about it too, in some of the research I've seen, I'd have to go ahead and cite it, and I can't do it on this podcast because I don't have it in front of me, but some research kind of shows that when you look at kind of a male triathlete at 170 pounds, that during a 6-month period, they would consume over 55 pounds of sugar. 55. Now,
Wow.
55 pounds, for our listeners, just think about that. That's like two big bags of dog food over your head.
Hmm.
55 pounds is 55 pounds.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a
a
lot of
lot.
sugar. And then you start to look at diabetes, you look at the pancreas, look at your metabolic health. And I think long term that could be detrimental. And I
Hmm.
think the sooner we can be proactive on that. So let's embrace this together to get the best information,
Yeah.
respect people's opinion, but at the end of the day, it's your body. Do what you need to do. So I think again, there's some gaps there.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. That's kind of I feel like it's my purpose and my mission is just YouTube videos, just doing them by myself, just saying this is metabolic health, this is what it means, and just explaining the basics, metabolic flexibility, metabolic efficiency point, and just help people understand so they can make their own decision, take ownership of their health if they wish, getting the information they need that might not hear out there from their own coach or program that they're following online, whatever. But I think it's confusing for endurance athletes how to fuel and train to not cause damage in the long term.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as I make observations, and I don't think I'm different than any other person that you just kind of people watch occasionally, and I think that athletes, if they're triathletes or runners or you name the sport, they're very kind of almost regimented on their nutrition, especially as you look at almost into the race week, that
Mhm.
they're going to have this exact because they believe it's going to make them better. Which, there's a valid point, but I think
Yep.
again, there's still more education because I remember as a professional triathlete back in the 80s, I mean, that welcome party, it was just like, man, it was a try eat a lots. It was just like we just felt that, God, the more we could just put away in this day and age, that's not happening. You don't need to do that. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, thank you for your insight of the race. I saw you finish, though. I was in my condo back in there. I didn't stay for I don't know how I used to stay and go back at midnight. You weren't there at midnight, but it was a long day. And you guys, did you have rain at the finish when you finished your time?
It wasn't quite
Rain?
raining. I'm thinking about that. We had a little bit of rain, I think. Yeah, we had some rain when we came back from the energy lab a little bit, but I think it rained even more later after I left. So yeah, it's just
Okay.
one of those nights in Kona.
Yeah, it was a great day, and I know it's just exhausting watching because I was thinking being a spectator is maybe not quite as hard as racing it, but you're out there early too, and then you're on your feet back and forth, back and forth. So the spectators get a award too for good family members supporting their athletes.
Oh yeah, and Debbie, I want to make sure that we encourage you and throw down the challenge that the 50-year anniversary of our sport is in 4 years. And I'm
Mm,
thinking, how epic would it be if we could get you at that starting line? I mean, I
oh,
would be honored. What do you think? Huh?
well, that would be a good challenge. I just went to the two parties we had here in San Diego last week, and we had the 40th anniversary of the Tri Club, but Yeah, everyone come out of retirement and do a race. It's tempting. You watch that finish line, Ironman Hawaii. It always gives me chills and going under around the corner under the tree and just lights you up and makes you want to do it. I know Gino of ART Gino, do you know him from Functions Health, Function
No.
Smart? We're both saying the same thing. You watch the finish line and everyone wants to do the race again or do
Yeah.
it the first time.
Well,
Maybe.
yeah, well, hopefully we'll get the men and the women back again together so we can really feel that
Yes,
Ohana.
we need
And
to
I would
talk
say
about that.
honestly, yeah, that was the missing element.
I thought so.
I think we started the sport that way and there's just something missing when women and men aren't
What's your
racing.
prediction there?
I think it's going to happen. I think it's a matter of time. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of wants to make it happen, but it's a lot of fine details on when it's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. So all signals that I have as I interface with people all the time, and I think Ironman's doing their due diligence to see how it can happen. But as you know, it's a vision, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
devil's in the fine details to make an agreement on how will it work for Kona, how will it work for the athletes, how will it work for Ironman. But I think the
Mm-hmm.
ultimate goal that would just be so awesome. In the meantime, we just keep chipping away and just support each other and encourage people to go out there and do their best.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty good. A special day. It's different without the women, I'll say that for sure. I'd love to see the men and women back in there in the next few years. So good information. Thanks for the motivation and
Yeah,
inspiration always.
yeah, thank you.
And we'll find you. You'll be at going to New Zealand too.
Yeah, I've got New Zealand in 3 weeks, so excited about wrapping up the year 70.3. And then I think that'll be a wrap. And then all of a sudden we're in 2025.
I don't know. So where should people follow you to keep track of your training and racing and updates on
Oh,
TriDot?
well, yeah, we got updates and tried out. You can use the tracker on race day. Also, just I'm on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And that's another place. You would just look me up there, and then again, Instagram and also on Facebook. So I'm out there doing what I feel is best to promote, to inspire, and just keep working together.
Yeah, me too. Love it. All right. Thanks for your time, Kurt. Love what you're
All
doing.
right.
Keep it up.
Thank you.